So if you take a look at the wires and cable segment, lots has been happening over there, but this is a more broader roundup on everything that's happened in the segment. So let's deep dive over here and take a look at what this segment has been doing, what the growth rate is over here. Now, historically, cables and wires are a segment that grow at about 1.5 times of GDP. But the kind of growth that we've been seeing in FY25, 90,000 crore rupees was the cables and wires market size in India, expected to inch up all the way to 1.5 lakh crores by FY29. That would imply a 5-year CAGR of 13%, and that in turn implies that this industry is growing at 2x the GDP growth from the traditional 1.5 times. So we're expected to see much more momentum in this sector going ahead. Let's understand where the demand comes from. The key end-use sectors for wires and cables are power generation and TED, renewable energy, data centers, real estate, infrastructure, railways and metros, defense and EVs, manufacturing and semiconductors as well. Let's talk about how Capex intensive this sector is and why cables matter to the bustling economy of the country. Now, typically, a project spend for Capex for wires and cables is roughly 3 to 3.5% of the entire overall Capex spend of any project, because wires and cables are integral to any development, be it industrial, commercial or residential. Sunrise sectors that include this cabling share is renewables, data centers, as well as BharatNet, where we're expected to see the next round of demand for wires and cables coming from. Four structural themes to talk about when it comes to wires and cables. It's mid-teens growth visibility for the next 5 years. New entrants have arrived, but cable-heavy incumbents are better placed in the system, and we'll tell you why. Exports opportunity. India has a global share to rise multifold when it comes to the global share of exports of wires and cables, and margins are protected via fast commodity pass-through. Let's understand each one of these. The competition has heated up, no doubt. Ultratech Cement, Adani Enterprises, and in fact, the most latest, Crompton Greaves, has announced a foray into the wires and cables segment. But this impact is expected to be limited. Why so? Because there are long approval cycles for the Capex plants and manufacturing facilities for wires and cables, roughly around 3 years. Customized products will take time to make, and the existing players already have sticky relationships with some of their top clients, and new capacity is expected to be less than 5% of the industry. So not major impact expected, unlike something that we had seen in the paint sector. The export opportunity, let's talk about that for wires and cables. FY20 exports were at 4,900 crore rupees, FY25 at 14,500 crores. So that's a very big jump and a CAGR of about 24%. India's share in the global market is just 0.6%, which means there is huge leg room to grow over here also. And the key demand drivers here are going to be the China Plus One theme, renewables, and grid modernization from Middle East, Europe, as well as Australia. Lastly, we were talking about commodities. Let's understand what copper has to do over here. It's largely expected to be a non-issue because copper and aluminium price revision in that cycle happens every 15 days, and it is very quickly passed through to the end user, which means margins are largely insulated, and best placed segment within consumer durables is what wires and cables is. So that's a deep dive on the entire wires and cable segment.
Yes, but I'm curious to know how valuations reflect all of that, Snehi, and we'll try and get that perspective as well for you viewers tomorrow, maybe.